I think the general idea of today's topic is made evident by the title and thumbnail, but some specifications need to be made. This will be the 5 Kage who fought Madara versus the Edo Kage in the war, with some slight tweaks. Rasa is going to be swapped for a hypothetical Edo 3rd Kazekage, and Hiruzen will be the Edo Hokage thrown into this battle. The other 3 Kage on the Edo side will just be the 3rd Raikage, Gengetsu, and Mu. You may be asking why I am making all these specifications, and that is because it is what Pedro, who paid for this video, requested, so shout out to him. To make this breakdown a little more structured and easy to digest, considering a 5 versus 5 matchup is a lot to go over, I'm going to format this as breaking down how each Kage compare to their respective counterpart, before going over how the group fight would play out. So I will break down how the 2 Raikages compare, the 2 Hokages compare, and so on. Now, a major problem most of the alive Kage will have in their respective matchups is not having a way to actually put down an Edo Tensei. Due to the immortality Edos have, you would need something like a sealing jutsu to actually win the fight. The only Kage that shows this ability is Gaara. None of the other Kage are shown using sealing jutsu. While I do infer most Kage have a basic grasp on many jutsu they do not perform on panel, this tells us nothing about the proficiency with the jutsu, and we would have to assume many things to grant them the ability to seal an Edo away. We know even high-level shinobi who have access to countless jutsu can still lack skill in certain areas, such as Jiraiya not being very good at performing genjutsu despite showing an insane jutsu arsenal throughout the series, and obviously just being a very high-level shinobi in general. The idea that the Kage outside of Gaara do not have good sealing is only further supported by them solely relying on Gaara for sealing during the Madara fight. Point being, if any of the other Kage have sealing, it is not combat effective and will not be relevant. With this in mind, none of the Kage, excluding Gaara, can actually win their one-on-one encounters due to having no win con. For the individual comparisons, I will mainly just talk about who's stronger and how the 2 fighters stack up overall, as just saying 4 out of the 5 fights are wins for the Edo Kage due to immortality is very boring. It will also help explain the result of the group fight if I actually go over the comparison of the 2 fighters, and not only who the final winner is. Starting with the 3rd versus the 4th Raikage, I have made an entire video on this topic, so if you want an even more in-depth breakdown, check that out. I will still cover the matchup here, but I obviously cannot give the same level of attention as I can in a dedicated video. My position hasn't really changed from when I made the video on this topic, which is that while A should be faster, the 3rd is so insanely durable that A would never be able to do any damage to actually put down the 3rd, while the 3rd has the ability to damage A via the Hell Stab, meaning the 3rd would just take all of A's hits until he's able to finally land a hit of his own, whether that is just through sheer chance, A getting sloppy, or A tiring out. Starting with the durability of the 3rd, as this is pretty easy to explain, Dodai directly says the 3rd is impenetrable multiple times. The reason Dodai is saying this is important is because Dodai was the person who oversaw choosing the partner to perform the double lariat with both the 3rd and 4th Raikage. Performing the lariat requires outputting equal force to your partner, so Dodai would have a good idea of the strength of both Raikages. The databook also just pretty directly implies this, meaning somebody who should have a good gauge on the strength of A still thinks of the 3rd as being impenetrable, which of course implies A's strength is not effective against the 3rd's defenses. This would be further consistent with Naruto saying the 3rd has a greater defense than Gaara, who is able to block an attack from V2A at the Kage Summit. Now, similar to the 3rd's durability, his power can also be gauged using Dodai, as Dodai considers the Hell Stab to be the ultimate offense, and considering he can penetrate his own body using it, it should have no issue damaging A, who is less durable based on the 3rd having the ultimate defense. With all this in mind, A's speed is basically irrelevant due to having no way to damage the 3rd, whereas the 3rd has a way to easily damage A. Considering the insane stamina of the 3rd, there is no reason A would win a battle of attrition, and would eventually fatigue and be killed by a Hell Stab landing. But regardless, to briefly explain the speed of A, he just compares a little more impressively to Keisumo Naruto than the 3rd does, and even Dodai can react to the 3rd at close range. Someone who should just be slower than A based on A being the fastest shinobi alive at this time. But again, this speed is not really relevant due to what I explained prior. Now, aside from having a way to definitively end the fight, I do think Tsunade should be stronger than Hiruzen. The Sannin are all stated and implied to be relative on numerous occasions. Without even getting into the fact that Tsunade in the War Arc is likely superior to Tsunade who is considered a match for the other two Sannin, this would at least put Tsunade as an equal to Orochimaru, who is stated to be stronger than old Hiruzen. Edo Hiruzen would then be even weaker than alive Hiruzen, as the Edo Kage were revived at close to their full strength. I know some people believe Edo Hiruzen is somehow an exception to this, and being an Edo alleviated the negative effects of old age, effectively making him stronger than when he was alive. But this is just made up. There is absolutely nothing saying this is the case. The only truth to this is that Hiruzen's poor stamina from his old age would be alleviated somewhat, but that doesn't mean he's actually stronger when both versions are at their best. Now, another common argument about Hiruzen's strength is him clashing with the statue that was beating all 5 Kage. All we see Hiruzen actually do is clash jutsu with the statue. He doesn't take down the statue or anything. While the Kage did tire themselves out attempting to beat the statue, they don't seem to have any issue with its power or speed, considering the base Raikage was still cutting the arms of the statue off, and a Mei who is almost entirely out of chakra can still react to its attacks. If Hiruzen had beaten the statue, what the Kage were unable to do, that would be one thing, but matching one attack isn't something that puts him over the Kage. We never see what happens when the Kage who aren't tired fight the statue. All we know is they didn't do enough to end the fight, not that they got overpowered. On top of the stats comparison, Tsunade's healing is just absolutely ridiculous, and Hiruzen would have no way to really do permanent damage to Tsunade, at least until her chakra runs out. So while she has no way to stop an Edo, Tsunade is definitely the overall superior fighter. With this matchup, I can finally just talk about who actually wins, since Gaara does have ceiling in order to actually end the fight. The third Kazekage can be a little hard to talk about, because we don't ever actually get to see him fight on his own. We can only go off of statements about him after he's already dead, and him as a puppet controlled by Sasori. Now, an important point to address is if the puppet of the third Kazekage used by Sasori is actually as strong as the alive Kazekage. To which the answer is, yes, it likely is. Sasori's puppets keep the chakra the person had when alive, and the third Kazekage can still use the Iron Sand, which is only possible due to the special traits he possessed when alive, meaning the puppet keeps the traits the person had. On top of this, what gave the third the reputation of being the strongest Kazekage was his Iron Sand, which of course the puppet can still use. This leads nicely into the statement about the third being the strongest Kazekage. There are numerous of these, with some not applying to Gaara due to specifying his predecessors, but some do just say he was the strongest more generally. Now, you could go into Gaara potentially getting stronger after these statements are made, which I think is likely, but I take a different issue with these statements. Many people take these to mean the third was the overall best combatant of the Kazekages, and conclude it means he could just beat Gaara. I, however, do not think these statements are saying this at all. Remember, the Iron Sand is what made him get the reputation as the strongest. This Iron Sand was an attack that got reacted to multiple times by beginning of Shippuden Sakura. Sasori even gets annoyed during the fight and feels the need to expend chakra for a wide-scale attack with the Iron Sand, due to Sakura adapting and avoiding his other attacks. So it's not like the speed of the Iron Sand is particularly impressive, considering Sakura goes on to be blitzed by base-heavy Sasuke. What is likely the case is the Iron Sand is more powerful, or hits harder in a sense, than any other technique within the sand. Not that the third can beat anyone in a fight. As a good example, Rasa is able to match Gaara in a sand clash, showing they have pretty similar speed and strength. But Gaara makes very short work of Rasa, with their fight only lasting about a chapter and Gaara not getting touched once. Whilst Rasa is similar in stats, he is far inferior to Gaara overall. Similarly to this, the third may have an incredibly powerful sand jutsu, but that doesn't mean he is superior to the other Kazekage in an overall fight. The unimpressive speed of his sand should illustrate this. The issue the third would have in this fight is just getting wrapped in Gaara's sand and sealed away, as he isn't shown using his sand as a shield the same way Gaara or Rasa does. On top of this, the third really has no feats for his body's physical speed, meaning there is nothing stopping Gaara from just wrapping up the third in his sand and sealing him away the same way he did to Rasa, especially considering the third wouldn't know the full extent of Gaara's abilities, which could easily lead to him getting surprised by the sand, whereas Gaara should be well aware of the third's reputation and the iron sand. This battle probably just ends with Gaara sealing away the third quite quickly. Inoki is another person who will have an issue actually finishing the fight, but in terms of a more general comparison, they are just quite relative to one another. We just see them class particle style equally, and Mu says Inoki is the only person who can stop him. This probably doesn't mean he can literally put down Mu, considering Inoki's lack of ceiling, but rather it's saying Inoki can stop Mu from killing other shinobi by matching him, which contextually makes sense as Mu is telling Inoki that he can easily take out other shinobi present. This statement would just further reinforce that Inoki and Mu are generally relative. Now, while they are relative, it would seem that Mu has the edge overall, due to his invisibility, with Inoki getting help from Gaara to track Mu whilst he was invisible in their original fight. And Mu even says Inoki will die without Gaara's assistance. Meaning, in terms of particle style and stats, they are basically equal, but Mu wins an overall fight due to invisibility. I will note though, that Inoki's particle style will be very effective in damaging Edos to the point that they are left vulnerable for sealing, even if he on his own cannot fully stop them. Gengetsu vs. Mei is the fight that has the least direct comparison between the two combatants, due in part to Mei honestly not doing much. To be more specific, she doesn't have much definitive scaling. Outside of fighting alongside the other Kage against Madara, her only notable encounter is with Sasuke at the Kage Summit, where after some very inappropriate flirting, she hits Sasuke with a vapor style, which begins to melt his Susanoo as well as burn Sasuke himself. The issue is, this Sasuke was not only collapsing from the extreme pain of using the Susanoo just a few pages prior to Mei doing this, but is also nearly out of chakra. This Sasuke is not at all reflective of Sasuke at his peak, so Mei's feats here are not all too impressive. If anything, her encounter with Sasuke is a bad look, considering Sasuke was both able to dodge her lava style and block one with no damage using the ribcage Susanoo, with these two feats being just a few pages prior to Sasuke collapsing, meaning it's unlikely this was even a top power Sasuke who did this. Now, aside from the speed and power of Mei's jutsu just not being that impressive, I doubt she would even have a way to get around Gengetsu's genjutsu. Once Gengetsu summons his giant clam, it casts a genjutsu that obscures the location of both the real Gengetsu and the real clam. The only way to stop the illusions is to destroy the real giant clam casting them. While almost all happens off-screen, we see numerous members of the Shinobi Alliance, as well as Gaara, failing to be able to locate the real clam for some time. Gaara eventually manages to do so using his sand, but this is not something Mei should be able to replicate. Gaara was able to search for the clam continuously while also defending himself using his sand, and Mei has nothing similar to this, and thus cannot locate the clam in the same way. Mei has also shown no notable sensory capabilities, so that is also not a viable option to locate the clam. Even if she did, nobody in the Alliance fighting Gengetsu was able to locate the clam, and there are some sensory ninja present, meaning even sensory ninja cannot see through Gengetsu's illusions. There is just zero way Mei will be able to find Gengetsu's clam and stop the illusions. She is inferior to Gengetsu off of this alone, but even aside from his genjutsu, Gengetsu has superior feats to Mei. While not taking place on panel, we know Mu and Gengetsu were rivals and both died fighting each other, which of course implies they are relative. For Gengetsu to die, it would mean Mu found a way to see through his illusions, so Gengetsu should be able to keep up with the actual speed of Mu's arsenal. If Mu was significantly faster, he would have just ended Gengetsu with a particle style and not lost his life as well. Mu states his jutsu is faster than Keisumo Naruto, which seems consistent with Naruto having to surprise Mu with his chakra arms to land a hit. Mei really has nothing on this level of speed, and the feats mentioned earlier of a weakened Sasuke dodging her jutsu should place her below these KCM levels of speed. So not only can Mei not get past the genjutsu, she also can't even land a hit on Gengetsu due to the massive speed difference. Now, predicting the outcome of any group fight like this, especially when both parties have a pretty ridiculous arsenal, can be quite difficult. I obviously have no way to cover every possible outcome in a 5 vs 5 brawl. Thus, I will focus on the most important points to give the best idea of the outcome of this fight. The absolute biggest factor in this battle will be the immortality granted by Edo Tensei. The only person who can actually fully stop the Edo Kages will be Gaara via his sealing. The other 4 Kage can still damage their opponent to set up an opportunity for sealing, but cannot finish the job on their own. This setup via damaging the opponent first will actually be required to seal certain Kage, as we see Gengetsu and the 3rd Raikage just bust out of Gaara's sealing, meaning the alive Kage will have to both inflict significant damage and then land a sealing jutsu just to take down some of their opponents. The Edo Kage do not have a similar issue, as they can just kill the alive Kage normally. There's also the fact that damage inflicted to the Edo Kage is only meaningful if it's significant enough to make an opportunity for sealing, otherwise they can just regenerate from it. As if everything prior was not enough of an issue, the Edo Kage will have superior stamina due to the endlessly replenishing chakra given to them by the Edo Tensei. All this at default puts the alive Kage at a massive disadvantage. The only broad advantage the alive Kage have is that because we are taking these characters from when they fought Madara, it means they'll be willing to cooperate and work together, which cannot be said for the Edo Kage. Now, with all that in mind, Gaara will be the most critical member of the alive Kage squad, due to being the only one with an actual win con, and being the only person who has shown a way to deal with Gengetsu's illusions. This is a massive problem, as Gaara had his hands full dealing with just Gengetsu, while getting assistance from an entire platoon and later Inoki. We see Gaara breathing heavily, clearly having fatigued himself fighting Gengetsu. In this fight, Gaara would have to deal with this and then seal 4 other Kage. If Gaara gets incapacitated or killed at any point during this fight, then it is effectively over, with the other 4 alive Kage lacking any win con, meaning they would just slowly fatigue and be taken out, regardless of how strong they actually are. Considering how tough the fight with Gengetsu alone was for Gaara, I do not see him being able to seal all 5 Edo Kage before being killed or succumbing to fatigue. Stamina will be a big issue for all of the alive Kage as well, not only Gaara. We have direct examples like how Inoki wore himself out fighting Mu and never actually beat him, but we also get an example of all 5 Kage fighting the statue later in the war, where they run out of chakra trying to take it down. The time period is of course not specified, but it took place within the same night at least, and this was with both Tsunade and Sakura providing healing for everyone. Point being, the alive Kage do not have some insane stamina allowing them to drag on the fight forever. These 2 groups of Kage are at least somewhat comparable to each other in overall strength, but with all the conditions the alive Kage have to win, they just do not have a realistic path to victory. To win, the alive Kage would have to keep Gaara alive and his stamina up whilst defending themselves, then inflict enough damage to all 5 Edo Kage to set up sealing from Gaara one by one, all before they begin to succumb to fatigue themselves. Mind you, this is all against opponents many of the alive Kage would struggle against or lose to even normally. Whilst the alive Kage are incredibly strong, they are in a fight that is unfair in far too many ways. The Edo Kage would win a group fight quite definitively.